Hey, good evening. It's Pastor King again, and today I am in North Tonawanda. I'm about 15 minutes from my house, and I'm standing in front of the Herschel Carousel Museum. Now, if you come to North Tonawanda from any direction, when you enter into town, you see the sign welcoming you to North Tonawanda, and they'll always say "Home of the Carousel," and because of this place right here. It's a really fascinating place. There have been over 3,000 carousel horses hand carved here. It's famous there. Carousels are all over America, all over the world, and it's a great place for children to come and just see all the horses that are carved and the carousel rides. One thing, as I was getting myself ready to make this video, I was curious, what is the difference between a carousel and a merry-go-round? And now, believe me, I am no expert on this subject, but from what I gathered, one goes clockwise and the other goes counterclockwise. And either way, whether it's a carousel or a merry-go-round, either way, you go around and around and around, and then you get off in the basically the same place. You don't gain any ground. You just kind of go around and around. And here's the sermon for today. I think a lot of people are living their lives that way. They're just kind of going in circles. They're really not gaining any ground. They're not gaining any momentum. They're not accomplishing really anything. And they're born, they live, they die. And when they die, the world is no better, no worse, no different than it would have been had they never really even shown up here. And I've got to say that I just don't want to live my life that way. Now, I thought of a verse. It's in the book of Deuteronomy. In fact, it is right there at the very beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. It's chapter 1 and verse number 2. And listen carefully. It's a little teeny tiny detail that you could so easily pass over, but it's here, and God put it here. It says this, Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 2, there are 11 days journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. Now, you might be reading through the book of Deuteronomy. You might read a verse like that and not even think a thing of it. But let me just pause on that for a minute and say this, that to get from one place to the other, as it's mentioned here, it was an 11-day journey from Mount Horeb to Kadesh Barnea, 11-day journey. Now, you do realize, don't you, that the nation of Israel went that distance, but it took them 40 years. It took them 40 years to take an 11-day trip. And you understand the reason why, and I won't get into all of the history behind it, but you had Israel, they came through the Red Sea on dry ground, and Pharaoh and his armies were drowned in the Red Sea. They got out on the other side of the Red Sea, had a great big celebration. Moses was leading them, and the plan was to go across over to the other side and cross over the Jordan River and to go into the Promised Land. That was the plan, and it didn't happen that way. But if they would have gone from Mount Horeb to Kadesh Barnea, it should have been an 11-day trip, but they wandered around and around and around and around and turned an 11-day trip into a 40-year trip. What a crying shame. What a crying shame. I want to just encourage you today to not spin your wheels in life. I want to encourage you today that you know where you need to be with the Lord, and you know the influence you need to have for the Lord. Don't let another day go by without making a beeline to that. Now, over on the other side of the Jordan River, that represents victorious Christian living. And then over on the other side of the Red Sea, over there, would represent the unsaved life. So a lot of people have been saved, but they're certainly not crossing the Jordan into victorious Christian living. And I want to encourage you today to make a beeline toward victorious Christian living. Now, very quickly, I scribbled 4 things down I just want to share with you today. The first of the 4 things that I wrote down is they were fearful of a better way. They were fearful of a better way. You know, there were giants over there in the land. There were giants that they had to go over and conquer in order to dwell in that land and inhabit that land, and they were scared of those giants over there. And I have to ask myself, why? If they just saw God conquer Pharaoh and his army, if they just saw God open the Red Sea, why would they be scared of giants over there? But they were fearful. And you know, I'm pretty sure I'm talking to somebody today that you would really love to be a dedicated, sold out for God Christian, but you're scared of something. There's some habit you've gotten yourself into. You're scared of letting go of it. There are maybe some relationships that you've gotten in the middle of. You're scared of letting them go. I don't know what it is, but God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Move forward in courage and become the Christian you know you need to be, and stop roaming around in circles like a merry-go-round. Second thing I wrote down is they were content with misery. They were content with misery. Right there in that middle area, no longer a slave in Egypt, not yet a victorious dweller of the Canaan land. They were in the desert. Have you ever read about the things they had to eat? It just wasn't, it was the same thing, okay? Didn't have to be. They could have gone over there and had all they wanted of better things, but they were content to live in the desert, content to live in an unhappy state. And I think a lot of people have become content to live a life that is not satisfying. And I want to say that when you cross over the Jordan into the victorious Christian living, it's satisfying there, but you got to get off the merry-go-round. You got to get off the carousel. You got to quit spinning around and not accomplishing anything. So they were fearful of a better way. They were content with misery. The third thing I wrote down is they found it easier to complain than to take action. They found it easier to complain than to take action. There are a number of sins that are recorded as Israel traveled through the wilderness. But do you know what the most prominent sin was that is recorded as they traveled on their way from the Red Sea, Mount Horeb area to Kadesh Barnea, the Promised Land area? Do you know what the number one sin was that is recorded? It is the sin of murmuring. They traveled around and around and around, and they complain and complain and complain and complain. And wouldn't you love to go back in time and just look at one of them in the middle of their complaining and say, do something about it. Do something about it. Take action. All right, stop just fussing and whining and complaining all the time, and do something about it. You're here in the desert. Okay, get out of the desert. You want victory? Okay, it's right over there. Go get it. Go get it. And I want to say to you today that you can complain about your life all you want, but why don't you just go ahead and take some action? So many of the complaints that you have could be settled if you would just live the victorious Christian life. But it's easier to complain than it is to take action. And then finally, number 4 is their wasted days led to a wasted life. Their wasted days led to a wasted life. 40 years. Joshua and Caleb got to cross over into the Promised Land. They got to. Nobody else did. The dividing line was 20 years and older died in the wilderness. The ones that were younger got to live to see the Promised Land. I want to challenge you today. To step up. To step up and get off the carousel, get off the roaming around, and head toward the Promised Land today. Hey, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful week. And listen, if we can do anything for you in any way, please let us know. We love you. God bless you.